mind us being able to use it, some snippets or whatever on our social media, so we let people know
For sure.
as well. And I love the logo. I gotta send us that over too, so I can shout y'all out and add y'all to our newsletter and all that stuff.
Will do.
And we are live.
Okay, we are live. Welcome to Lab Results. We are live on April 6th. And excited about our conversation this evening. I am Marty Monaghan, the Executive Director for the Black Man Lab. I have one of our panelists from this past Monday here with me as a guest tonight. Excited to have a conversation with him. Before we get to that, though, a few things about the Black Man Lab. Black Man Lab started roughly 5 years ago, just by four fathers that wanted some extra voices for their sons, because we know quite often as fathers that our sons might tune us out, but they'll listen to an uncle, a best friend, a godfather, somebody other than us that might say the exact same thing. So that was the premise of it, and then from that it grew. It grew because those young men felt value in it, and they brought their friends into the space. And that continued to grow to the point that we started meeting at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. And prior to the pandemic, we were over 250 black men every week. And that was black men from the ages of 5 years old to 85 years old. So we call it a intergenerational learning environment. So we're back live again now at the Andrew and Walter Young YMCA. This past week, we were probably at right about 160 people. So we're growing again all over again, and we expect that number is just going to continue to expand with the various topics that we have every week, and the incredible environment that we have for the Black Man Lab. One of the things that we do every week prior to getting started with the Black Man Lab live sessions, as well as here, is that we make sure that we call on one of our ancestors. And we do that because we want those that are listening in to know that we are not doing this work alone. We know that everything that we have done and are doing is on the shoulders of those that came before us. So I'm going to ask my guest before I actually introduce him to come on with me, and we just raise a fist and we call one ancestor's name, one person that would be proud of the work that we're doing, and if they were around still, they'd be doing the work with us. So if you could with me, Brother E, on three, just call a name. 1, 2, 3. Sylvester Williams.
Floyd Thomas.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And with that, we want to get started because this goes relatively fast every Wednesday when we do this. And I want to bring on this gentleman because he's a wealth of information. He has been coming to the lab now for the past couple weeks, right? Maybe 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And every time he's bringing information, he's sharing not only as a panelist, but also as just a person in the room. And that's what it's all about. So with that, I'm going to introduce my brother Eric Thomas. Eric, how you doing?
Doing well, Marty. How you doing today?
I'm great, brother. So you just give everybody a little bit about your background, what you're doing currently, and then we're going to dig a little deeper than that too. But first, let's start there.
All right, not a problem. My name is Eric Coach E. Thomas. I am co-founder of Pharaoh's Conclave, executive director of our nonprofit PCX Go, where we prepare youth K through 12 and at the college level for careers in the esports and gaming industry. Also, I am professor of esports at Morris Brown College.
Who knew, right? Professor of esports at a college. I mean, that in itself just tells you that times have changed, right?
Oh yeah.
When I grew up, there would have never been a professor of Atari, you know, Tecmo Bowl, right? So we are excited to have you. Let me know a little bit about your background. So you grew up where?
I'm born and raised Atlanta, Georgia. I'm from the community called East Lake. Most people probably know East Lake Meadows, that Glenwood, Austin Drive, 2nd Avenue area. That's the side of town. I grew up actually across the street from the golf course that has a tour championship now,
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, when I was growing up, it was a private course and they didn't really want black and brown people on the course playing, uh, even when I was growing up. So just to see that transformation and just the transformation of the neighborhood is just mind blowing.
Sure.
Product of Atlanta Public School System, went to the East Lake Elementary, Emmett Middle School, and then graduated from Benjamin Elijah Mays High School.
All right, a maze guy, huh?
Yes, sir.
I'm from Chicago, but I hear, whenever some people throw that out there, "Hey, maze. I went to maze,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. That's you came out of Mays. You pretty good people.
Right on, right on. So, tell me about your family. You brothers and sisters, mom,
Older
dad.
sister, lot of older sister, same trajectory. East Lake, Southern Middle School, and Mays as well. Um, Graduate of Florida A&M University. Pretty
Okay,
much everybody in my family went to an HBCU.
beautiful.
My dad, and we'll get into him a little later. He graduated from Morris Brown College. My mom, Clark, Atlanta. My wife is a Spelman grad, and we actually have been tracing back our heritage. We had a great some odd number aunt that actually went to Spelman College back in the 1880s. So
Wow,
we are currently tracking down her name right now. So
wow,
it goes a long way with our love for HBCUs and the work that we're doing.
man, that's beautiful. Y'all are deeply rooted in it. I love it. I love it, man. We're in a time now, man, when there was a time I think that our own community thought less of HBCUs. Unfortunately, just because that's what that other society told us about ourselves, right? And now we see in all of them. I'm a Howard guy, but in all of them, not just Howard, not just Spelman, not just Morehouse, but there's deep value in all of the HBCUs, and I love it, man. I love to see it and love to hear that your family is so deeply rooted in it. So tell me about you got through with school, and then what?
And then, so it was interesting actually. I was in the JRTC program at Mays High School, and one of my colonels, he wanted me to apply to the Naval Academy, well, Service Academy. He wanted somebody to graduate to get a chance to go to the service academies. So I actually got accepted into Annapolis, the Naval
Wow.
Academy. Out there in Annapolis, I went to visit, and upon some good advice from some of the brothers that were in attendance, they said if you have a chance to go to the prep school in Newport, Rhode Island, do that and see if it really sticks. So I spent a year in the Navy, went to basic training right after I graduated high school, and spent a year at Newport, Rhode Island. So it was a school slash, basic naval base. So that was interesting. I grew as a man in that in that scenario, in that situation. But again, I was privy to firsthand a lot of the experiences of just inequality that was happening in the military. And this was in the 90s. So I graduated high school in 96. So this was 96, 97. And just the treatment that we as Black cadets had while we were there, it just didn't really sit well with me. And as I kind of pondered what I was going to be doing for my college career, I was like, you know what? I need to spend time with my people. I want to go somewhere where I'll be nurtured. And because of, the history of Tuskegee University and me wanting to be an engineer, understanding, Booker T. Washington starting it, George Washington Carver doing all of his experiments and all of his breakthroughs there, and patents, and many other students doing the same thing. And the Tuskegee Airmen really caught my fancy because I wanted to get into aerospace engineering, and I wanted to be a pilot as well. So I wanted to go to Tuskegee just so I could be close to that history and have it ingrained in me. Um, and so from there, I ended up switching my major from aerospace engineering to construction science management. That was civil engineering with business. Um, and so I had the opportunity to start to work on projects that allowed me to be able to see my ideas and my work come to fruition. If you're in aerospace, you could work on a project for 10 some odd years and it'll never come to light of day because it's all research based and theoretical until they, give it the proper budget and then it's made. But on the civil engineering side, I'm building edifices that people are going to be using, be it residential or commercial, these are going to be buildings like schools, like data centers, you know, hotels, stadiums, things that people are going to use. And that, to me, that was something I wanted to help leave my mark on this world.
That's awesome, brother. And you know, it's funny when you were mentioning Annapolis and the prep school. Um, I know two brothers that one went to the prep school, wound up going to Annapolis. Very one of my very close friends, and then my very best friend went to Annapolis, and you know him, and that's Miley Davis.
Oh, yeah.
So Miley, you know, I went to Howard, so he spent every weekend down at Howard, and I spent some time up in Annapolis. And what's so funny is that he'd sneak me in, and I'd stay in the dorm there. They had this huge dorm, um,
Mm-hmm.
and he'd sneak me in, and I mean, brother, I stuck out like a sore thumb. You know, there's all these clean cut cats, and here I am, dude from Howard, had an earring in my ear. I had no business being there, right? And I was like, what? Like, why would you want to be in this environment? But it served him well. I mean, it served him well at the end of it. But yeah, it's a different road for sure, man. And you probably made the best decision. So.
Oh, I definitely made the best decision. For me, it was
Right.
the best decision.
Right. So you get out of school, you finish up, and what's your next step? What did you right after that? Like right when you finished, what was your next step?
It was kind of interesting. So once I graduated, I had some job offers with a few companies, Brassville and Gorey, and so that was one of which. And I went out to. They had a headquarters in St. Louis, and they flew me out there. And this was in the middle of winter. And so when I got out there, and I was like, I'm expected to go to this meeting for this interview, and it's snowing outside, and I was like, I don't think that's gonna sit very well with me. So what I ended up doing is, upon graduation, I turned them down. Came back to Atlanta, and I actually interned for R.L. Brown and Associates, who was a graduate of Tuskegee University. He's an architect here in Metro Atlanta, and he was building. During my internship, we were actually working on a lot of the schools in DeKalb County. So I went back with them for a little while as I got into the market. So my first job was with a company called Winter Construction. And then I left them and ended up going to Holder Construction. And so once with Holder, that's when I started actually traveling around the country, working on airports. This is when data and fiber was first coming out. And so we had to retrofit and build all that into different airports, the international airports and the hubs. So that was a real eye-opening experience to see how they were doing that and be a part of that. So it took me all the way across to the West Coast in California and Arizona, where I was working with those projects. And so once I left that, it was interesting. I came back to the headquarters here in Atlanta, and I was still working. And at this time, I became a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, where I was always working with young people and youth all the time. And so one of my VPs, he stopped me in the hall one day, said he wanted to talk to me for a little while. And he noticed that, I was in the meetings, I would be there present, but sometimes I wouldn't be, right? He could see that I was, thinking about some other things. And he knew about all of the tutoring I was doing, all of the mentoring that I was doing. And he said, if that's really your love and your passion, then you should really pursue that. He was like, you have a great mind. He says, I see how when we have students to visit the office, how you interact with them and the things that you're doing. He said, well, you might want to actually pursue that. And so I took his advice. I left Holder, and it was actually right about the time I got married. And so my wife, who was a graduate of Spelman University, she was finishing up her PhD in computer science at Georgia Tech. And so before she finished, she actually got assigned with IBM in their research and development department. And so she moved out to Silicon Valley. So I got married. We moved out to Silicon Valley, and I said, this is a clean break. Let me go ahead and see what this education system is all about. Why is it that our young people aren't really, loving mathematics or getting into engineering, things that I love to do? So I wanted to kind of do some research at that time and see if I could be a part of the solution. And so I started teaching when I was in California. So basically, I served as a elite substitute teacher around the Bay Area. So I'm teaching in schools in San Jose, in Oakland, in San Francisco, and all the different towns in between. And I got a chance to really cut my teeth as an educator out there. And this was mainly a Latino population.
Mm.
And I would only really see a lot of my black students when I would go to Oakland and some in San Francisco, East Palo Alto. But I had a chance to really see that I have big technology industry on this side and I have education on the other side, and trying to figure out, well, okay, why aren't we really preparing these young people to take these jobs, to go into these industries, and really get a chance to look behind that and start to do as much work as I could to make sure that I was fostering relationships between those companies and those schools so students could have that opportunity and be exposed to those different pathways that existed.
Mm. And so you had that experience. What got you back to Atlanta?
My second child. So being my wife and I are both from here, we had our second child, and we knew then that we needed a little extra help. And it wasn't that, it was the distance. The grandparents were coming out. They were loving it. They were
Mm.
just starting to retire. They were spending time out there, and I was like, but whenever I needed to go somewhere, we needed to do some things, we would have to leave our kids with somebody, or we didn't have that help, that network
Mm.
system,
Built in,
that
yeah.
built in like we would if we came back home. So she decided to leave IBM, and that's when she went back to her alma mater at Spelman to teach. And I came back and I got into the APS system back in Atlanta Public Schools. I was a college readiness liaison
Mm.
for our Project Grad initiative that we were doing at the time. And then I went into middle grades and high school math, science, and history teaching. Again, I just wanted to try to affect as many students as I possibly can, trying to figure out the best mix
Mm.
for us to be able to do that. And then also, we had our kids, and I knew they would be growing up with the same values that we had. Now, California is wonderful, but it's not Atlanta. It's not Atlanta, and
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
the stuff I knew that they would be exposed to, and to grow up around a community that looks like them. Like
Sure.
Atlanta's different. I tell people that all the time. I say, come to a Hawks game, a Falcons game, even a Braves game. You're gonna see a whole different
Yeah.
looking audience than you will anywhere else, and you'll be driving down the street, and you'll be right next to somebody polished, all the way to somebody doing all kind of jobs. Entrepreneurship. I mean, again, they talk about, DC being the Mecca, and I'm sure it is. I've been there several times, but there's just something about Atlanta. I guess it's with the
Yes.
Southern charm that's here in Atlanta that I wanted to make sure that our children had. And we
Yeah.
travel still, but that's what really brought me ultimately back here to Atlanta.
Yeah. I'm really a newbie to Atlanta myself in terms of living here. I've come to Atlanta for forever with I have family here as well as my best friend. So I've been coming for a long time, but living here now, it's so much different than I'm from Chicago, and as big as Chicago is, and as many black folk are in Chicago, it's just very different here. It's a different level of richness with it, which I totally appreciate. So completely get that, man. Now, how old are your kids? And you just have two?
I No, I actually have three. So we had our
Three.
third child here. My youngest is 8 years old. His name is Eric. And my middle child is my daughter. She'll be 12 in June. And my oldest is Pharaoh. He's 13 years old. He just turned 13. So he's doing his rites of passage this year, which actually culminates with a party for him over the summertime. But at the end of this month, we're actually taking him to Egypt. He's already been to the continent
Oh
with my
wow.
wife. He's been to Rwanda, so now he gets to go to Egypt. So we're taking Pharaoh to Egypt, and we got doing some cool stuff out there. He's going with his school, so we're kind of chaperoning a little bit as we go out there. But again, for him to get that experience, that's next to nothing. I mean, where
Yeah.
else would you be able to do that? It's just amazing.
That's beautiful, man. The Pharaoh's going home. Look at
Oh yeah,
that.
oh yeah.
That's beautiful, man. I love it. I love it. So, um, your latest transition. So you've gone from your teaching on the high school level, and you moved into the college level. But what
Mhm.
else?
So prior to moving into the college level, probably all the way back in 2011 when we were still living in California. We were watching HBO Real Sports with Brian Gumbel, and they were showing a cut scene to a sold out Staples Arena of these two kids playing video games competitively for a big old prize. And so we were like, oh, okay, what is this? And so that's when we really learned about esports. Now, see, me growing up, I was playing games like Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Oregon Trail, Pitfall. I'm on the Atari. I'm on the Commodore 64. I'm living the dream, right?
Right.
But this was a whole new thing that was happening out there in California. And what we noticed was, when we moved back to Atlanta, we wanted to figure out where that scene was because we saw a part two that started to talk about colleges and universities that were building programs for esports and doing scholarships for students in esports. So we were like, well, what does this actually exist here in Atlanta? Because we're not seeing this community. But when we found the community, we found it to be the same as we saw in California, white, male, Asian dominated, right? And it was older folks that were in it. And so we were like, as educators, we were like, well, who's training up the next generation of these individuals that are going to go into this industry? So by 2016, we decided to start our Pharaoh's Conclave, where we started with tournaments first. But as we were working with young people, noticing that there weren't a lot of tournaments for young people to be in and nobody's really doing education or training, we said, okay, we got to build it, right? And so, it's interesting because as we did that, we ended up having to build more and more of the pipeline, which ultimately led us to Morris Brown College and led us to our apprenticeship program that we have going on now as well. So that was kind of the transition. So I left. I was doing this while I was still teaching, right? And we started some other entrepreneurial event endeavors as well. So, we were just trying to find our niche, but we knew we wanted to really be in education and training and workforce development. So that's where I decided to go ahead. We sat down and I got the okay from the boss lady to leave a job and to pursue Pharaoh's Conclave full time and our nonprofit as well. So it's been good. It's been challenging, but nothing is worth anything if you ain't got to work for it.
Right on. I know that feeling for sure. Um, Let me ask you this: with with Morris Brown, did they already have a program in place?
So the Dr. Kevin James, shout out to Dr. Kevin James, who was the president of Morris Brown College. I knew him back in college. We're both also members of the Kappa Kappa Psi National Fraternity for College Bandsmen. So we were both in our respective marching bands. So I've been knowing him for over 20 years. And when I found out that Morris Brown was going to have an esports program or they were interested in it, we set a meeting up. He was giving our contact information and we were going from there. And when we actually got onto the Zoom call, because this was during the pandemic, right? Everybody was doing Zoom calls at the time. And next thing I know, I hear ET coming coming out of the computer, and I'm looking, and I'm like, KJ. And so at that point, he was like, "Oh, well, I know this program is going to be a bomb program." So we took it from there. He shared his vision, what he wanted to do with the program, because at this point, Morris Brown College was coming back
Coming back, right?
to its prominence. It never closed its doors, but we had to regain accreditation. We needed to regain our financial aid status. And so a part of that vision was to have relevant programming at the school for students to take that would take us to the next level. It became a blank slate. Unlike many of our other HBCUs, and I have not a problem with any HBCU. I think they're great. But recently, and you talked about this earlier, there was always this undertone of are they still relevant, right? What are the HBCUs doing to affect change for black youth going into our society? And so part of the issue with HBCUs a lot of times is they're so steeped in tradition, it's very hard for them to pivot without having to cut through a lot of red tape, be it with their trustee boards or with their alumni. Morris Brown College was in a unique position to where, we had to strip out everything and rebuild quickly. And one of the quickest ways we could do it was to add a esports program. So they had the degree program, which is our esports performance concentration on top of our global business management and applied leadership degree at the school. So with that, we needed to have a facility. And we also needed to make sure we were pipelining students with internship and employment opportunities as well. Because again, we wanted to make sure we were showing outcomes with all of the work that we were doing. So once we figured all of that out, we raised approximately $200,000 between my company and my family to donate. Because again, like I said, my father graduated from there, so that was our main tie. Although a lot of my teachers growing up here in Atlanta were products of Morris Brown College. I remember Morris Brown had one of the top schools of education when it was in its heyday. And so, if I knew all of those people poured into me, I wanted to make sure not only was I upholding my father's legacy, that I was also paying homage to those who came before me, who taught in my life throughout my grade school, because I wouldn't be where I am right now without them. So we took on the challenge. We built the facility. It's called the Ronald Floyd Thomas Center for Esports and Innovation. There on the campus, and I actually got a chance to go back to my old construction roots in working with the architects and designing and doing the construction from demo all the way to where the center is right now. And we're still doing some things on it. We're still building. We have plans to expand and do all kind of awesome things on there. But once we got a chance to do it, we wanted to make sure we were there and it was going to be done right. Because there's some other facilities and people wanting to do this, but it wasn't by us. So we wanted to have a place that was built by us, for us, and also for the community the right way.
Man, that's amazing, and I imagine that it's probably going to be fairly cutting edge in terms of the facility and all the things, the resources that will be offered with it. How many total folks are in the program right now?
So right now we have about 10 students that are in the program at various stages. Majority of them are freshmen that either started this past fall or this spring. We are slated to probably bring on about 50 more next fall. So recruitment has been, really been jumping, and I've been meeting with a lot of parents and students, because once they found out that we have a esports program, it has been pretty much selling itself.
Sure.
So, but the reason why we wanted to make it an innovation center and not just an esports arena is because we wanted to make sure that we were talking about all of the career pathways that exist in the gaming industry. So we have the PCs and the equipment to do game design, streaming. We have 3D printers. We have VR goggles. So we're talking about AR, VR. We have production equipment, right? From the lighting to the cameras to the audio equipment. All of those careers exist, and we wanted our students to be able to touch industry standard tools so they could understand, because if we're going to train them to go out into the workforce and even to start their own companies, they need to make sure they're working with the best.
That's awesome too, because you never know, right? So you may, like, I think about some young folks I know, particularly my own son. They're into gaming, right? And they think of it in just one tunnel in terms of creating a game, but there's so many other ancillary pieces that go with it. I'm sure there's the artwork, there's the storyboarding, there's the all of the kind of stuff that's technical in terms of the architecture of the games. So that's awesome that you have that all there available. I'm sure there's also marketing pieces of it and all that other stuff. So that's beautiful, man. And I was asking that question about how many you have currently, because I'm thinking I go to some different schools and do different programming, and one of the things I always ask is first thing I ask is, what do y'all want to do?
Right.
And gaming is a big thing that kids want to do. They talk about different types of gaming and whatever, and I'm like, well, I'm not the person to talk to you about it, but I know some folks, and I
send them my way. Send them to me. Send them to me.
I imagine, man, that they would love to hear about it. Are there other schools that have big e-gaming?
Actually, no. That's the other interesting part. So what you'll have is, like, when you're talking about the different pathways that exist, a school like a SCAD or Georgia State, or some of our HBCUs like Southern University, they have some programs that'll be like electives. They'll have a game design program, or they'll have a graphic arts program,
Mm-hmm.
but they don't have anything specific. And they haven't really pulled them all together to specifically have a program that's going to get them prepared to go into the industry. It's right now they'll just maybe fall into the industry once they kind of get one or two things under their belt. So we are the first HBCU to have a degree program, and we're actually one of the first schools in the Southeast region to have esports degree program as well, be it HBCU, PWI, or any other school to
Anybody, yeah.
do that. And so, I mean, it's interesting that it's taken this long for it to come to. You would think, schools like maybe a Georgia Tech or some other schools,
Sure.
but again, they have a similar problem. They're already functioning, right? They have all of these schools already there. So to actually bring in a new major, is very daunting. It's very big wheels to to turn in order
Sure.
for that to happen. We were very fortunate. It was bittersweet that it had to come out of something like that. But again, rising like a phoenix, through destruction comes something beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing, and for Morris Brown, it's going to have a much bigger purpose, obviously.
Oh yeah,
So that's beautiful, and I imagine, as you were talking about the other schools, they'd have to actually do what Morris Brown is doing or has done now, which is make the space for it, get all the equipment and all that stuff, and they got stuff they got to deal with already. So,
oh
you
yeah.
know,
They're moving in that direction. A lot of because we have partnerships with a lot of the different HBCUs, especially in other
uh,
schools. They've expressed interest in wanting to do it. And so kind of the way it's going is creative media and arts is where they're going in that direction, as opposed to the traditional computer science, where you say computer science, you kind of pigeonhole yourself in one area that you
mm,
can work in. But when you say creative media and arts, then you can branch out and do things that are more artistically inclined. So now you're not just talking about STEM, you're talking about STEAM. You're bringing that A in, and now you are opening yourself up to more of the liberal arts side of things, where you can bring in um, to the education at that point. And it's interesting though, also, and some schools are doing it differently. So we take Tennessee State, for instance. They are creating a master's program for esports right
oh
now.
wow,
They've started it already, and so that's gets you to a professional degree. And then you have Southern University Law Center. They're creating a esports law concentration right now.
wow,
So we're talking about pipelining our students to an undergrad to a postgraduate degree program that they can get in to find out about it. Because at that point, when you talk about law, you got IP law. IP law is everywhere. It's not just in esports or gaming.
sure,
It's You're talking about real estate law. You're talking about with the master's program, MBA, where it's a business just like any other, and it's $150 billion industry. So they need everything that a regular industry has as well. So you can train up, students to be a part of that. And if you're interested in video games, you don't have to leave the love. You can help build the industry based on your love.
man, that's something. I mean, it's crazy when you think about the possibilities. Is that as you're talking, I'm thinking about if there were a vast majority of schools that had programming like this, would there be, and maybe there is already, I don't know, but would there be, just as the NCAA has basketball, football, so on, would they have esports the same way, or are they working on that already, or do you know?
Yeah, actually, it is. So there are several colleges and universities that compete at the college level, collegiately, for esports, and so and it depends on how they want to do it. So they'll do it maybe from an intramural standpoint, and then there are some that have, sanctioned those to be approved institution sports, so they can actually, go from. They have not yet NCAA. One of the reasons is, to become professional in esports, you can do that at a very young age. And so, with NCAA regulations, it's an amateur. You have to
Sure.
remain amateur, so you don't have that ability to go professional. So there's a lot of red tape there. However, the colleges and universities are starting to pull it together. On the HBCU front, 6 years ago, they weren't really listening for it. But due to COVID, because esports was already digital, the pathways became clear for the schools to get into it. So you do have some burgeoning leagues at the HBCU level as well. We also have a league that we do, and our focus is minority serving institutions. So it's not just the HBCUs, it's the tribal colleges and universities, it's the Latin and Hispanic serving institutions, it's the Asian Pacific Islander serving institutions as well. We want to make sure that we're moving the needle in this industry when it comes to people of color and for women as well. So we want to make sure that that's our focus. From a higher standpoint. And now that the schools are starting to build it up, it just makes our job a whole lot easier. We had to do a lot of educating in the beginning, but now it's like they understand that it's a lot of money out there and opportunity. How can they get started? So they're reaching out to us. Even now, some high school systems have esports program. As of probably about 3 years ago, the Georgia High School Association sanctioned esports as a varsity sport. So you can actually letter in esports right now. So all of the schools in Georgia the mandate has gone out. So they're now building their programs so they can get ready to go to these colleges and universities, or even go pro if they're that good. So, the opportunities are great. Again, COVID bittersweet, but it allowed us to be in a place where people could see it. So everything that we're doing right now is something that gamers have been doing for years already. They've already been streaming. They've already been using these types of tools to communicate. So, they are well suited to go into any industry, utilizing this technology.
Man, I didn't plan on us going this deep in it, but it's so interesting to me. It just because I'm a sales and marketing guy, so my wheels are turning, thinking about all the different types of opportunities and levels of expansion that you could add, like you're talking about on the high school level that they already have it. Just what kids could possibly get into at an early age and really graduate eventually into what we were talking about on Monday, which is the world of entrepreneurship and building their own startups, because getting that kind of information early on, right, and education early on in any field is amazing, but in this one particularly because it's still, although it's launched, it's still on a huge uptick.
Still grassroots.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still grassroots. Early enough that, man, where these young folks could be if they, were able to focus in on it the way that you're talking about it.
And, right. And it's a mindset, right? It's a mindset, because we get a lot of times from our parents, we don't want them playing the video games, or how can I, keep them off of the screen time and different things. So for us, it's, well, let's get them gaming for a purpose, right? Mm-hmm. Let's find out what they're interested in, and then we can then point them in the right direction. So when they're playing the game, they're, measuring their KPIs, their key performance indicators on the game. They're graphing that. They're looking at that. So how can I become better? And then they also are starting their own streaming channels the right way. So they're using social media the right way, because we know it's a toxic environment. There are still, unfortunately, predators out there. But but our students, our young people are going to be using these tools anyway. So better to teach them how to do it the right way, where they can now form a business for themselves, or an idea behind a business. I think, like I told a couple of young men who were working on MBAs that were at the lab last Monday, that, you should be already incubating your ideas as a capstone project with what you're doing in school right now. So if we have our young people exploring the industry and working on those ideas right now, I'm talking about merchandising, like you said, marketing, video production, all of those different things. If they're working on those ideas right now, then they can be those independent consultants for different companies or nonprofits that need that. Like we were talking about earlier, this is some technology that not everybody knows, but the young people do. So if they already are proficient at it, then they could be the ones running the Zoom or running, the streaming for Black Man Lab right now, right? Mm-hmm. That's what they could be training for, and that's what we're going to be doing, and making sure we are setting up our young people to take that over. Because, I can have great ideas, but the ideas these young people have, once you give them permission, and I hate saying it that way, but we kind of beat the creativity out of our young people with a lot of the stigmatism behind testing and other things that, they're just like in school zombies right now. But once they see the light and they understand they have permission to create, then we take the back seat, and we're helping to facilitate all of the wonderful things they're doing. And that's what the purpose of Pharaoh's Conclave is.
And the purpose of Black Man Lab. So
Exactly.
that's exactly, you are dead on. I mean, I think school has become a, unfortunately, unless you have a really exceptional teacher, school has become a check the box kind of an environment for the kids, right? Where they go through, make sure they check the box. I'm gonna take an ACT or SAT at the end of this. Hopefully, go to school. If that's their path, right?
Right, right.
And continue on that same kind of a journey. Maybe going to college, you might open up a little bit, but the reality of it is the younger that we get them, the more their creative mind is just fresh, and there's not a whole bunch of interference there for them to be creative and have thoughts to where, and it's happened in the lab so many times where you'll hear a young person express their thoughts on what they want to do, and I'm like, damn, do it, yeah, because I never thought of that, but you're right, do that, you
Right,
know what I mean?
right.
Versus, well, no, what you need to do is you got to go to school, you got to get good grades, about which of course we want that, but the reality of it is man, these our kids specifically, I think, are just damn near genetically built to think in an innovative and creative way
They
every
are.
day. You
I
know,
mean, it is. And we talk about, when we talk about what we do, we also introduce our young people to a man by the name of Gerald Lawson, who back in the 70s, while Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs were building their personal computer in Silicon Valley, he was building the first gaming console with interchangeable cartridge technology. And he said, you know what? I wish I could pause a game. And he invented the pausing of the game technology.
wow.
He introduced all of that. And this was a black man in Silicon Valley that nobody knows about. You talk about hidden figures. These are the people we want our young people to know about. And this is what's in their DNA. So if we go there, if we go to the inventor of GPS, if we talk about, the inventor of the traffic light, or any of the many and sundry things that we touch on in our daily lives that was invented by black people, we were always innovators out of necessity because we were slaves, right? And we had to make our lives easier because they were really hard. So we had to figure out, how can we clean up better? How could we wash clothes better? How could we prepare food better? How could we move things better? We had to always innovate on things to make our lives better because we built this country. And so we needed to build the country in a lot of ways, just like our ancestors did. So if you go back to Egypt and anywhere in Africa and you look at any of those, the
Sure.
architecture, the medical facility, I mean, people were doing things in like 2000 BC that can't be replicated to this day. They were
Right.
already working on doing eye surgery, dental surgery. They were already building buildings that we can't even replicate to this day. They were already doing irrigation systems. They were already charting, maps with the stars. They were already doing complex mathematical calculations, you know, that we still can't even do to the nth degree that they were able to do
Right.
even then. And this is in their DNA. But again, slavery did what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to strip that away from us.
Come
And
on.
so what we have to do, if it took 400 years, 400 plus years to strip it away, it's going to take double that time to put it
Yep.
back. So we
Yep.
have to we have to really work hard at doing what we're doing now.
And that's why I was gonna, you hit the nail on the head. What I was gonna say is, the interesting thing is, we talk about from slavery on needing to be able to innovate and create just so that we can survive, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the reality of it is that only could happen because of what was in us prior to that. When you talk about Egypt and Kemet and all that from back then, and look at what was actually going on in terms of architecture, technology, medicine, mathematics, you name it. You talk about what was going on then. What happens is that the society that we live in has disconnected us from that, right? That's not our young folks. They probably think that to this day that that's just that's just pie in the sky or some sort of fairy tale, but it's factual things that occurred, and it's also what's in you to make you be able to do the stuff that you've been doing that you don't even think about. Our young folks do stuff and create, and they don't even think about it. That it's just they're just coming up with something to, whether that's being create music or you name it.
Right.
Something to innovate. It's just done. It's in them because that's part of our DNA. The challenge is where our society is today. Is some of it's purposeful, some of it's not, but it gets in the way of that innovation and that creativity. And so that's really what you're talking about, what you've been doing, and what the Black Man Lab is about. Is we just want to open those doors back up, right? So
Got
that
to.
young folks come, you know, 2 generations later aren't, in the same positions that we're seeing today. And I know, we said 400 years of stuff, and it's gonna maybe take just as long to get that all fixed. I think that, man, where our kids are today, if put in the right environment and given the right tools, they have the ability to change stuff quick.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah. And
that's
those tools are available now. And that's one of my good friends always talks about how, with the advent of the internet and then, cell phones and just the technology that we do have at our fingertips right now,
yeah,
kids nowadays are born hardwired, as I always say. We were given the plug as we were growing up to use,
yeah,
but they literally were already born hardwired. I can still remember my kids as toddlers, grabbing my phone and swiping and going directly to whatever they wanted to see or
yeah,
consume or put
yeah.
together. I mean, it was like, how do they really know how to
How do
do
you
it?
know that? Right.
But you know what? It's blood knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's in their
Mm-hmm.
DNA. It's already there. It's already encoded in them, literally and
Yeah,
figuratively, and it's there physically. And it's
yeah,
amazing to see where they can go. And so once you give them that opportunity, and I think we talked about that at the meeting as well, give them options, right? Give them the opportunity, expose them to as much because they can't dream about doing what they don't know. They
right.
have to see it, they have to touch it, and then they figure out what they can and can't do, or then they start to imagine themselves in those positions. But until we get a chance to put that in front of them and immerse them in that, that's where the challenge comes for us.
Yeah, and the beauty of that, you say they can't do it, and if they don't know about it, the beauty of them finding out about stuff in general, whatever it is, whether we're talking about e-gaming or being a doctor or being anything, the incredible thing is that when you put them in the environment, and now all of a sudden they say, "Oh, well, I'm good at this, right? I know that I'm good at this, and I can do that in this space, whatever this is, right?" And but before that, they may have had where they knew they were good at one particular thing, but they had no idea of where to let that out at, where to
Hmm.
chase that dream at.
Exactly.
Um, I can think about myself. Like when I was a kid, I was always into animals, still am, but I wanted to be like Jacques Cousteau. Like that, I watched Jacques Cousteau all the time. There's two. He's a really weird kid. I like Jacques Cousteau and Julia Child. So I eventually went to culinary school, but I wanted to really be like Jacques Cousteau. But I had no real path. Like everybody that knew I loved animals, all they'd say is, "Oh, you should be a vet." Well, I didn't want to be a doctor. I didn't want to be a doctor on animals. I wanted to go out and be with them. And
Right.
at that time, you didn't. If you watched, there was no Animal Planet. You know what I mean? There was
Right.
nothing to set my goal for it. So dreams deferred. Now I just have a lot of pets. So
Oh yeah,
um,
but you're still there, and what you can do now is you can foster that into another young person.
sure,
Cause
absolutely,
like growing up, same thing. We were told doctor, lawyer, scientist, engineer. That was
sure,
basically you needed to go to college to do that.
yeah,
But now, if they have an interest in animals, one of my first questions that I ask any student that I come across, I want to know what they're interested in. I want to know what they're passionate about. And
yeah,
once I figure out what they're passionate about, then, I can start to point them in the right direction. So, I mean, I have interns at all over the AUC. So I had two young ladies that came to me that wanted to be a part of my program. And so, of course, we're talking about gaming, we're talking about, esports and designing and graphics and everything. But then I'm looking at them, but I'm like, listen, this is all well and good. These are vehicles, but what are you really passionate about? So one
Mm-hmm.
young lady, we talked about her major, and she's a political science major. I said, okay, so that sounds like you want to be a lawyer. She said, of course. She said, yes, exactly. I want to be a civil rights lawyer. I said,
Mm.
okay. I'm thinking in my Rolodex in my mind, oh, Attorney Griggs. I can now connect her to someone that she can shadow and ask and learn about their journey on what they've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And put them together so they can learn if that's really where they want to go, or if there's a different part and a piece of that industry that they want to
Mm-hmm.
kind of go into. So with game design, you may want to be on the hardcore coding side, or you might want to be on the graphic side, like you said, the storyboard, story development, character development. There's
Mm-hmm.
a plethora of things you can do in any industry, and the
Sure.
more they know, the more they grow.
Absolutely, absolutely. You would get that young lady to Maui. You know,
Oh yeah.
he's a professor now doing over at Clark. He's got a class at Clark.
Okay.
Where
Well, I definitely have to connect her to it.
yeah,
Definitely.
he you know he loved that. So
And that's one of the things about Black Man Lab, right
yeah,
there, right?
yep,
It's full of men that are in so many different areas and women that are in
yep,
so many different areas that, when a young person comes to me, it may not be my area of expertise, but there's somebody that we're connected to be able
yep,
to say, okay, well, let me connect you to so and so. And because we have our meetings on Mondays,
yep.
I can say, hey, come to the meeting on Monday, and I can actually put flesh to flesh. They
Sure.
can actually see eye to eye and get a chance to make that connection. And now, who knows what's going to happen after that?
Yeah,
We're going to hear down the road that, she's the next powerful civil rights attorney, and she's going to be the next Supreme Court justice to, to be conferred, right?
yeah,
This is where this goes. And once you get to those levels, now you're affecting change, not just in our community, but the world.
yeah. Absolutely, and that's again, you hit the nail on the head. That's really the impetus for what the Black Man Lab is. We just wanted to be. I think maybe you did or somebody did on Monday use the term incubator, but an
Yeah.
incubator for us to be able to just download. You know, every that's the beauty of it, man. I think, and I try to explain that to people when I say come to the Black Man Lab. You know, I'll meet a brother, and literally today, I was downtown and a brother saw this pin on me, and he's like, "Brother, what's that?" He said, "I've seen that before." He said, "What is that?" And I said, "It's Black Man Lab." So I went on to explain everything, and he's like, "Oh man, I want to be." I said, "Every Monday, 6:30, come and bring a brother with you." I said, "It'll be life changing for you," you know. And so he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna come," you know. So he gave me his information, but I even within that and me explaining it to people, it doesn't do it justice of what it's like to be in that room,
They
you
have
know.
to come
So
and see.
you
They
got to
have to come
see,
and see and be a
yeah,
part of it.
yeah,
Yeah, the atmosphere, when you get in there, it's so tangible. The
yeah,
love that's in the room, the peace that's
yeah,
in the room, just the mindset of
yeah,
everybody that's in the room. You can really tell that everybody's in there for a purpose. They're
sure,
hungry. They want to hear something, but then it's not just that. But they have wisdom to impart in the
mm-hmm,
conversation, and it's literally a lab. You go in the lab to put things together
yeah,
and come out with something else.
yeah, yeah,
So it's literally a lab. I mean, I'm amazed and I'm having a great time.
yeah,
And I have some young men that I'm going to be bringing from the AUC
love it.
campuses. Men of Clark is one of them. They have a
Okay,
men's group, young men's group. So I'm going to bring a lot of those fellas over. I'm going to get to
please,
the Morehouse
please,
guys and everybody, and I'm going to get the Spelman young ladies to come on in as well. I want not just for them to come in and experience and figure out what they're doing, but I want them to come in to be examples. Like you say, it's intergenerational. So those
yes,
young people that we have coming in that are 5 years old, now they say, we grew up, like, I remember watching A Different World, right?
mm-hmm, yeah,
And I was like, oh man, it's a black college. I got to, that really fueled me and made me want to go to college for real, for real. Now I knew
sure,
I was going to go to college, but that right there, I was like, listen, I need to have my different world experience
mm-hmm,
when I go to school, and then to watch the movie School Days, and just to be like, okay, there are really black colleges. And then when my cousins would go, my sister would go, I would go and visit them, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to do. I did have that one stop in Newport for a little while, but that was an opportunity though, right? I didn't want to say what would have happened, woulda, coulda,
sure,
shoulda, right? I wanted to get that experience, and it helped me grow.
yeah,
It helped me really understand what it is I want to do, and also helped me learn more about the world and how the world works. Because that's the other thing that we want to make sure our young people get. We want them to understand how the world works, how systems work, and how can you be a part of those systems to enact change within them.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so yeah, going to Newport, as I like to say, you saw some things, right?
Yeah, I
And
saw a few things out there.
yeah, and I get that from having worked in corporate America for a long period of time, and some of it you're blind to, and then eventually you're like, wait, what was that? You know, wait, was that? You find yourself in the bathroom looking in the mirror, asking yourself questions. Did he really just say that to me? And did that just occur to me because I'm who I am? And then you start to realize, yeah, it did, and it's true.
It happened. It
Yeah,
happened.
and it happened. So I know the environment that you're in. I'm just saying because I know what that's like. So, yeah, that's one of those experiences I think a lot of our folks need to actually have to
Hmm.
have an idea about what systemic systems look like in terms of racism
Yeah.
and white supremacy, so on and so forth. So, um, yeah, man. But the lab environment um, is one that I think that is significant in us being able to try to catch the young folks at an early age, but not us per se. Like you talking about bringing those young brothers from the AUC, that's huge, man. Because we like to what we try to do, and we're really purposeful in it. Is when we have some young folks come in the room, we try to have some young folks that are a little bit older than them to attach to those folks. You
Exactly.
know, because the people again, even though we the premise of what Black Man Lab was from fathers trying to get other voices to talk to the young folks, we're still old men to them. So
Right. We're still a dad and their uncle, but
yeah,
you get
yeah,
your brother, your cousin in the room,
yeah,
and they open up. They want to open up a little bit more, and it makes sense. I
yeah,
think back. I didn't tell my dad everything. I wasn't telling my uncles everything. Even though I had great relationships with them, but
yeah.
I would tell my little slightly older cousin things
Hmm.
that I wouldn't tell them. I would tell my god brothers or somebody like that,
Right.
all kinds of things. So yeah, we have to foster that environment because there's a gap, and I think one of the elders talked about that. It being a gap between the generations, and it's not something that it's something that was formed intentionally to keep us apart,
Sure.
right? And so
Oh
we
yeah.
have to put back in the missing pieces, which is all of us at all ages,
Yeah.
so that we don't have those gaps anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. And hey man, we're growing. We're growing like crazy again. I'm excited about it. We're looking at actually doing some um, Black Man Labs in other parts of the city as well.
That'll be huge.
Yeah, man, it's you. It's almost like you can't do enough. Once you get the kind of fever of it, I know you feel it too. It's like you just can't do enough. Because you see the the reactions and sometimes the results of it, and you want it to keep pushing forward. So, look, man, we went quick and long, man. We're up against the clock already. We didn't even get to talk deep about what happened on Monday, which
Right.
we'll have to revisit that one. But I did think that the conversation on Monday was great. We had some good questions from the audience. Was there anything that stood out to you?
Oh man, I think the question that I usually hear all the time is, where do I get started? Was one of the questions.
Yep.
If I have this idea, what do I do with it? How do I get connected in? It was a few questions along that line, or where do I go next after I've
Yep.
done this particular step? And it really is the Black Man Lab. That's the next, right? If you stay around it, you keep talking about what you're doing, you get connected to men and mentors that'll say, okay, you've reached this point, here's where you go next.
Yeah.
Or here's an opportunity. I heard you wanted to do this. Why don't you stop by this other thing that's happening, right? Conferences, workshops. It could be meetups. It's a lot of things that happen in Atlanta, Georgia. There are a lot of different organizations that are doing the same work. And I
Yep.
think, that's one of the things that Black Man Lab does a good job of is bringing different organizations to the table so we all can work together and we don't have to get that burnout. Because I remember as a teacher, you could get burned out real easy. As a youth, I'm a youth minister as well. Like you can
Okay.
get burned out real easy. So you got to have a team
Sure.
around you. And so building that team, you got to have some trustworthy people that you can put on that team
Yeah.
as well. So that's a good place to vet those people that can be on your team and get connected in. So you can
Yeah.
answer those questions. What next? Or what can I do with this idea?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And that environment is one of not purposeful, but it just happens this way. One of accountability.
Hmm.
I think everybody knows they're going to see each other. Again in that space. So, I've had people that have asked me a ton of different things. Or looking for assistance with stuff, just by proxy of me being in the position I am. And I feel obligated because I'm like, hell, I'm going to see them next week, so I got to make sure whatever
And
was
that's
asked
cool.
was done. Yeah,
That's a big part of that. Accountability is
yeah,
something that we have to maintain as well, because
yeah,
people come up with those ideas. People are well intentioned, right, to do a bunch of different things, but
sure,
we often get caught up in the hustle and bustle of life, that we don't have
sure,
that accountability to move forward with the ideas that we have or move forward with the change that we're working on.
yeah,
And it has to be there. It has to be there. And knowing that you're going to be there Monday, or you could try to duck it. But there's enough people that saw you there that if they see you in the
yeah,
streets, it's like, hey, what's going on?
yeah,
You have that partner to be like, because we know and understand, if you are a business owner, entrepreneur, you're a father, you probably have some other jobs that you're probably working on. You have all these different things, your husbands, you have significant others. There are so many different things. You're in different organizations. They'll pull at you. So
right,
sometimes it happens, but it also lets you know, again, you can't do it by yourself. And that's
right,
one of the things I believe that we talk about all the time at Man Lab, that makes me feel better and confident, and that makes me want to be there so that
yeah.
it can help me stay on task.
Man, well, we appreciate having you in the space, bro. And I'm gonna continue to lean on you. Glad we've made the connection that we have. I got also before I let you go, I have my Thursday night workshop that I do at the Y, and I have about 15 young guys in it, and the gaming piece came up, so I said I got a guy who's putting together, potentially putting together a league, and man, those kids went crazy. I want in, I want in. I said, oh, I'm just giving you a little pre-information. So,
That's
um,
all it takes, just to put that nugget out there. And then
yeah,
after that,
man.
it's like, oh, I want it. But I
Yeah,
tell them it's work. And
yeah,
so, yeah, I'll definitely love to come in there, because I know on Thursdays, currently right now at Morris Brown, we have two groups of high school students that come through and they are competing in the year. So Washington High School, I have a set of young men from Washington High School that show up. Shouts out to Miss Johnson, their coach. She brings them in. We're doing some wonderful things with them. And then I have some students from TSK, Bobby Jackson, his school.
yeah.
They
Okay.
come through, and so I'm working with some of their young men that are interested in game design. So they're actually going to be applying for my apprenticeship program, and they're
Love it.
building a team. So yeah, that's what we want to do. Ultimately, we want all these teams around, and I'm going to be inviting the Black Man Lab out to our summer conference. This will be our second annual Youth Esports League Championships and Conference. We'll be at Atlanta Metropolitan State College. Dr. Lewis, he's invited. He's given us a space there, and so it's going to be a conference and it's going to be gaming tournaments going on. So they get to see the industry working. And so we want to invite as many people to see that and be a part of that as we possibly can. And then, I mean, it's just, so we're ready. So when they're ready, it's work now.
Yeah.
It's a full on program. It's just like, hey, just like it's more than starting a football program or a sports program. Like this is education, workforce development, and competition all wrapped up in one. So I'm ready
Brother.
for them. I got
We're
them.
gonna talk. We're gonna talk because that's just something that I think can capture the minds of our young folks, and get them engaged in something that could lead to them doing some incredible stuff in the future. So I'm with it, and we're gonna talk further about it, man. Look, we're over time. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being on this evening. It was great. Thanks for sharing your experiences. Again, thanks for being in the space on Mondays, and look forward to you continuing and bringing those other young men into the space. We in this just like we do at the lab, bro. So you just want to lock up with me, like just like we're in the lab, and just repeat. I'm linking this chain,
I'm a link in this chain,
and it won't break here.
and it won't break here.
I'm linking this chain,
I'm a link in this chain,
and it won't break here.
and it won't break here.
We are links in this chain,
We are links in this chain,
and we won't break here.
and we won't break here.
Ashe.
I
Appreciate you,
say,
bro.
I say,
Thank
I
you
say,
again,
oh,
man, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday, bro.
I can't wait. I can't wait, man. I'm so excited.
All right, partner. I'll talk to you
Thank you.
soon. All
I
right.